Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at how we can change the subject of a formula. So a formula is an equation that links one variable with one or more other variables in an equation mathematically. We can transpose the formula using inverse operations to change the subject. Transpose, another word for that is like rearrange it. And what we mean by subject is in our formula, one variable will be by itself on one side. That is the subject. So looking at this example at the bottom, that V there is the subject because it's by itself. So V equals to a bunch of other things on that right side. And we see here by using the inverse operations, say if I subtracted A2 to the other side, I would now have VO as the subject. Or if I subtracted the VO and then divided by T, I would make A the subject. So it's the same formula, just written in different ways, so that one of the letters is by itself. So that's what we mean by changing the subject. And we do this by using our inverse operations. We can't just write random things. We need to make sure that mathematically it is still the same. So let's do a few examples. Given the formula I equals V over R, we want to make R the subject. So that R we want to get by itself. So let's just start by writing the formula again. I equals V over R. So we want to get it by itself, and we can't just swap I and R over, although actually that will be the answer. We need to move things around so that we can get R by itself. First of all, we notice that the R is the denominator of our fraction, and generally we don't like seeing that we're trying to make R the subject, we don't want it to be in a denominator. So let's multiply it to the other side. Why are we multiplying? Well, using our inverse operations, this is saying V divided by R. The opposite of dividing by R is timesing by R. So I'm going to times by R, and so now I have IR equals V, okay? So I've actually made V the subject of my formula right now. But lastly, I want to get R by itself. This is saying IR means I times R. The opposite of timesing by I is dividing by I. So if I divide I on both sides, I will now have R equals V divided by I, which we can write as V equals, the R equals V over I. And there we go. We've rearranged the formula. So now that R is just by itself. We've made R the subject, and that's the end. This equation or this formula had no numbers in it at all, but we were still able to apply our normal inverse operations. Let's look at another example. Given the formula V equals V1 plus V2 over 2, we want to make V1 the subject. So these little symbols down here, the little 1 and the little 2 underneath the V's, by the way, they aren't like some mathematical operator like squaring or something. This just means like here's just one V and here's like a second V. So it's basically just a different letter. Anyway, so I want to make V1 the subject of this formula. Let's just write it again real quick. V equals V1 plus V2 over 2. And as I mentioned in the previous example, I'm trying to get this one by itself. And to do that, I want to take away the 2 and the V2 one at a time. Best way to do that, as we saw when we were solving equations, is we want to get rid of the thing that's furthest away from it first. So let's get rid of the 2. The way that I'm going to get rid of that 2 is times that by 2, times that by 2. So this will give me 2V equals V1 plus V2. Now that I have that, I want VI by itself, so V1 by itself. So I want to subtract V2 to the other side. And once I've done that, I can say that V1 equals 2V minus V2. And now I've rearranged that equation. I swapped the signs, you might have noticed. I swapped, like here the V1 was on the right side, I just changed it to the left side. That doesn't make any difference at all, but I've now got 2V minus V2 equals V1. So now V1 is the subject of the formula. Last example. Here I want to make M the subject of my formula. Now there's two ways of doing this, and I'm going to approach it in two different ways. But I want to make M the subject, this one here. Let's just start off by writing it again. So I have A 10 X minus M. And if I were to, the first thing I want to do, as we would have seen when we were doing the questions about solving equations with brackets, is I first want to expand those brackets. So if I expand, I do 10 times x, which equals 10x, so A equals 10x minus 10m. And then next what I want to do is I would want to move that 10x to the other side, so subtract 10x, subtract 10x. So now I have A minus 10x equals negative 10m. And then lastly, what I want to do is I want to get rid of this negative 10. Remember, this is saying negative 10 times m. So the opposite of timesing by negative 10 is dividing by negative 10. So if I divide this, I would also divide this by negative 10. So I would end up with A minus 10x all over, sorry, I should be dividing by negative 10 over negative 10, and that equals m. And now I've rearranged the formula to make m the subject. It looks a lot more messy than the original formula, but now we have m by itself. Before I finish this video, I can just show that we could have done it a different way as well. So if I had A equals 10x minus m, what I could have also done, rather than expanding, is I could have just divided by 10 straight away. So if I divide by 10, divide by 10, I would have been left with A over 10 equals x minus m. So now I don't even need to expand anymore. And now what I could do is maybe I could subtract the x. So I'd have A over 10 minus x equals negative m. Now, note that this is negative m. I haven't actually made it the subject of the formula just yet, because to make it the subject of the formula, I want positive m. So lastly, if I was to divide everything by negative 1, divide everything by negative, divide everything by negative 1, I could have maybe like negative A over 10 plus x equals m. Bit more complicated, but and you might even be saying, well, those two equations aren't even the same, but they are actually mathematically, like this and this are actually the same if you were to simplify everything through, but we'll leave that for another video. Changing the subject of a formula can be quite tricky, but it is a very important skill to have, particularly when you're working in electro. You have a bunch of different formulas in electro, and you need to be able to move things around within those formulas to find what you need, given whatever information you already have. So definitely something to work on. Hopefully this video has been helpful in completing those exercises you need to do.